All right? That's how starch we were in keeping the law back then. But now they have taken certain, what you would call individuals from amongst our people and propped them up as leaders who are ironically Christian, like Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson and guys like that, to promote paganism amongst the people so that you'll believe that it's the right thing to do. When really they are puppets of the DuPonts, the Bushes, the Rothschilds. They are puppets to be used to cause our people to sin. So Nehemiah stood up and said, listen, if you continue to do this, we're going to lay hands on you. Now that's in the Bible, right? Now, but the Christians will say, well, that was back then. Something have changed now because Jesus came. This is what they said. Let's go there. Dealing with the Sabbath with whom they call Jesus. And I'm going to say whom they call Jesus because during Christ's time, there was no such letter as the J. So there was nobody on earth anywhere calling Christ Jesus. And that's a whole nother conversation in itself. For those who don't know, Christ's name in the Hebrew is Yeshua, which means Savior. That's his name. Yeshua is his name. Not Yeshua, not Yehoshua, not the names that came from the Jewish Masoretes who injected Latin and Greek tongue into the Hebrew tongue during the first century to dilute the power of the Most High in Christ's name. Knowing that there's power in what they would call, we don't call it that, but they call it spiritual invocation. Knowing that everything we see here was made with the word. There's power in words. So if we speak the true name of the Most High in its ancient tongue, it has force and power like it's written of in the book of Ezra. So they're trying to keep us disconnected from that power by diluting the languages and keeping the slaves from the name they called on when our people were led out of Egypt. But let's go back to Matthew 5 and 17. And let's see what Christ says with his own mouth. And Christians, this should be your Christ anthem. Every Christian should know this scripture. Matthew 5 and 17.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill.
He says, think not that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill. How can the Old Testament be done away with when Christ was a fulfillment of the Old Testament? And there's things in the Old Testament that have not been fulfilled yet, like Christ's second coming. That's written up in the Old Testament. I hope you know that. When you get a chance, read Isaiah 63. When it talks about him coming to take down the powers of Edom. That's your Illuminati. That's your Roman Empire. That's your 10 horns in EU. Christ is speaking of taking them down in Isaiah 63. So if the Old Testament is done away with, how can Christ fulfill that prophecy coming to pass? See, they came up with that, what I would call disclaimer, saying the Old Testament doesn't matter or done away with, so they can pick and choose what to follow. But you can't use Christ to do that. That's you being deceived by man. Because Christ said what? Read it again.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets.
I did not come to destroy the law or the prophets. That's what Christ is saying. So don't try to claim that Christ came to undo what his Father did or what his Father sent him to do. Read.
I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill.
See, but the Christian church would make you believe the law was destroyed by Christ. No, they're not following Christ. They're dealing with an antichrist. That's the harsh reality. And because you've followed it so long, you can't convince yourself, you can't even imagine that you would be following Satan. But the only way you would know, one way or the other, is screening that through the scriptures. Screening it through the Bible. Okay, so Christ didn't come to destroy the law. So I don't care who your pastor or preacher is. If they tell you that Christ did away with the law, you know they're a liar. Because Christ said with his own mouth, he did not come to destroy the law or the prophets. The law is the first 5 books of Moses. The prophets is the rest of the Old Testament. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Nehemiah. So he didn't come to destroy what we just read in Nehemiah. And you notice when Christ went through the temple, beating them out of the temple. Why? They was there on the Sabbath selling sacrifices. Similar to what Nehemiah was dealing with when he said, if you keep on coming near this wall, I'm going to lay hands on you. See that? Trying to exchange and make finances on the Sabbath day. I thought Christ was doing away with the law. But they was exchanging in the synagogue, because that's the day, in the temple, because that's the day people come to get their sacrifices so that the Levites can produce the service for them. So if the law, if the Sabbath was done away with, why was Christ on the Sabbath? Why did Christ go in the synagogue on the Sabbath and read out of the law? Why didn't he go on Sunday? I'm going to get your Sunday in 1 second. Why they switched it to Sunday. I'm going to deal with that in one moment. But I want to deal with one piece at a time, from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And why would your Creator trick you? Why would he say it's the Sabbath one time and then switch it and say, well, it doesn't matter some other place? The Bible didn't trick you, brothers and sisters. The Bible is clear with it. Christ warned us of the deceiver, which came through the Roman Catholic Church, which came from the same people who destroyed us in 70 AD. They are tricking us into worshiping their God. Thereby, they're over us. That's the whole point. It's part of their rulership. You know, a people are totally programmed and under your power if they follow your God. So we're doing this thing in reverse. Not only are we rejecting the gods that we have, that have been given to us by our slave masters, and rejecting our slave masters, in turn, we're going to the Gentiles and letting them know to come out of their Gentile ways and follow the God whom they will serve coming. Let's go to Matthew 12. Christ himself. Yeshua himself. Read.
Verse 1.
Start at the first verse. Thank you.
At that time, Yeshua went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were an hungry.
So you know you're not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath, right? So now we're showing you the grace of the Sabbath. Now, I'm bringing this twofold. Why? Because Christians go here to tell you this is why they deal with Sunday worship and not follow the Sabbath. And I'm going to show you they can't do that. As a matter of fact, this gives credence to why we must follow the Sabbath. It's going to show you. Read.
And his disciples were an hungry, and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat.
So here it is. You know you're not supposed to gather anything on the Sabbath. But Christ and the disciples, after working all night and teaching the word, they were hungry. So they're walking through the corns, eating the corn, and you got the Pharisees out there. Now, for those who don't know who the Pharisees and the scribes were, they were the so-called upholders of the law. They had a phylactery with them in which they will look, and if you're breaking a law, like a police giving citations, they can point to the law and tell you exactly what you were doing wrong. It's called a phylactery. All right. So here it is. They're hanging out around the corn. Now, think about it though. If you are out there where they're dealing with the corn, claiming they're doing something wrong, you must be breaking the Sabbath too, right? Isn't pointing out a law and working and going back, reporting back to the Pharisees and the administration like a police would, isn't that working? But that's what Christ was trying to show them, that there's grace in the law. Now, this is not telling you to go find another day to worship, like the Christians say. But they'll go to this scripture because they're worshiping on the Sunday. And my answer to that, for those who were running the Christian to say that, well, can you please tell me in this chapter, you're saying that the Sabbath is done away with, which is not in the chapter. But please tell me, where in the chapter does it say worship Sunday? But this is what they're going there for. Right? But let's give you the scenario. Christ and the disciples are tired. They're eating, plucking the corn. Now, Christ knew that, but he wanted to show the Pharisees and scribes something too. Read.
Verse 2. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day.
So he went to Christ. Went straight to the head. Well, your disciples is doing some things that you're not supposed to do, during the Sabbath day. People are not supposed to be out here. What did Christ tell them?
Verse 3. But he answered unto them, Have you not read what David did when he was an hungered, and they that were with him, how he entered into the house of the Most High, and did eat the show?
Now you notice he's going straight in the Old Testament. Why? Because these Pharisees and scribes were experts of the Old Testament. That's the difference between those that were back then and the Christians and people that are following now. You understand? The Christians have no idea what was going on in the Old Testament. Therefore, they don't understand the New Testament. Because the slave masters say, don't worry about the other half of the book that Christ came to fulfill. Because, you may learn too much. You may find out that you the people, 28. Don't worry about that. Just deal with Christ and the stuff we're programming you in the theologian seminary colleges, and take that back to the ignorant in your neighborhood so that we can continue to poison and kill them. That's what you do, slave. And do it. And while you're doing it, make sure you sign up for a 501c3. Get tax free. We're going to make sure you don't have to pay no taxes as long as you go lie to the people. And if you say anything against politicians, we're gonna take you down and everything, your finances, because you signed this contract. Okay? That's how it works. Finish reading.
How he entered into the house of the Most High, and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat.
So David went and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat in the Old Testament. Why? Because the Most High was dealing with David. Christ would be fulfilled by going through David's loins. So David was dealing with war. His men was dealing with war. They were hungry. The only place there was food was the showbread in the temple. Now you know, anyone touch the showbread, you're dead on the spot. But David was given grace so that his army could have energy to continue the will of the Most High. Now, are you going to say David is wrong? That's what Christ is showing them. What Christ is showing them, is there room for grace on the Sabbath to do good if it's the will of the Most High? The Sabbath is not supposed to be a burden to you. There is grace on the Sabbath to do good. That's what he's showing them. Right? Because everything was the law. Well, what about, and the Most High didn't give us the law so that we can be restricted. He gave us the law to be free, to follow it in the Spirit. But these guys wanted to use it as an excuse to penalize. You understand? This is what makes me better than you now, because I'm doing it and you're not. Or penalizing people.